Okay, guys. So in previous class, we saw three, four extra classes we created. One was for DAO, one for service layer, and two configuration classes. So DAO was for user class, and we simply created one method which says find by username, right? And that's the. Then we created one user details service MPL. So idea was simple that like we create DAO classes, entity classes, we need to create service as well. This service is doing some special task. The task is to load the user details by giving username. And good thing is we don't have to do much. We simply need to implement one interface from Spring Security. I've already taken one screenshot from the Spring documentation. And what we're just doing, going into database, fetching the details based on username. Otherwise, throw the exception. So I simply used JWT feature. Then we used JWT authentication filter. And this is around, we can say it's a concept of filters, like every request goes through a filter. So what we just did, we created a class JWT authentication filter. You can create it by any name, but make sure that you are extending once per request filter class. And once you do this, you need to override one method, do filter internal. And we wrote a simple logic. What we're doing here, we are taking out one header from the request, that is authorization, checking whether it has bearer in it or not. If it is there, take the token output from that authorization string, then validate multiple things from there, like extracting username, when and also checking whether security context holder does have any authentication or not, and doing some operation on it. So this was a part of JWT service, or you can say configuration. Then we created a configuration class, a security configuration class. We were simply, the main idea to create this class is to have whitelisting the APIs and securing our application by outside threats. One of the thread we already disabled here, which is called as CSR. So in these two lines, we are simply whitelisting these endpoints that we will allow login and register. In future, we haven't created these endpoints yet. We will create them. Then one endpoint I marked it admin and has any authority. Yes, that's admin. So if I request this endpoint, only this endpoint will have this authority admin. We will see how we are going to implement. Then other things like managing the session, which is stateless, then authorizing through that filter we have created in previous image, then giving some exception in case something goes wrong. So what we're throwing 404, 403 code and unauthorized, and once it's done, just build the operation. So this is what we did in previous class. Now in today's class, we'll try to wrap up everything. So last thing is left is controller, right? That's how we work. We create entity, then we create service. Sorry, we create entity, we create DAO, then we create service, and then finally reach out to controller. So let's try to create that controller. Right click on the controller package, new, and go for Java class, and let's create that authentication controller. Here I will create two endpoints, login and register. So let's call this. Again, you are free to call it anything. I'm calling it authentication controller. Done. Okay, since it's a controller class, so we need to make it at rest controller. Done. Now need to create two endpoints. Let's start with register. Okay, but even before that, we need to auto certain classes. So we will use constructor based. What do you call that? Auto. So here I will use authentication. We created this class authentication service, right? That's what controller do. They auto service classes. Authentication service. uh, service. We should have this class or no? Authentication service. It's from here. Where it is? I think I missed this class. Yep, I think we missed the class. Huh? authentication service. Mhm. Yep, we missed this class, guys. Okay, so let's create that as well. Forgot about this class. We should have this authentication service class as well. And of course, we in later once we log in, so definitely we need to, what you call that, uh, log out things, right? So, yep, we need to create this authentication service as well. We missed this class. My bad. Let's create that class as well. Authentication service. So we should create. Um, let's create here. It's going to be a simple Java class, service class, authentication. Okay, you can say IMPL. Let's move it here. Refactor, and let's refactor the name IMPL. Okay, since it's a service, so let's mark with service generation. Now let's auto wire multiple stuffs we just did, right? So we have created multiple classes. So first, let's say user uh, repository we created, not user repository, user tau. This done. Then we need to auto wire. I mean, we are going to auto wire multiple classes we created for this JWT implementation. Let's encode this password encoder. Private JWT service we created in package. There it is. Okay, then we need to let's comment this out. Otherwise it will give errors. Okay, JWT service is done. Then let's use token repository, right? We have that class as well. We created early here. Token down, and then finally the manager. We created authentication manager. This one, okay. Authentication manager. Okay, and again we will follow that constructor based auto wiring. Right click, generate constructor. Yes, I need all 5 fields to initialize and say okay. Okay, just a constructor based. Okay, constructor based auto wiring. Okay, so fields are done. Let's use them. Okay, and this authentication manager from Spring security there. Authentication manager. Okay, so we need to create multiple methods. First, register. Second, you can say the authenticate, right? We need to focus on these two methods. Register the user and then authenticate the user, or you can say simply the user request we are going to focus on. Okay, so let's start with register method first. We'll say oops, public authentication response. There is one interface plus authentication response. Uh, or we can customize our own, right? That will be also better. Because if we create our own classes, so that will give us some hands practice. Okay, we can also create this when it's all about customizing the response. So we can also do that. Just thinking authentication kind of response we need to generate. Okay, that yeah, that's a user and it is the legit user. Like, and that in that class we can simply put some simple stuffs. So what I'll do, I'll create one class under here. Like we have API response for our API response, right? we need to create one more class for authentication response. That's the idea. So we already have API response. Let's create authentication response. Okay, there it is. And here again, we'll keep it really simple, just two fields. One will be token, that JWT token, and then next would be the message, like what happened, right or wrong. So private, and definitely we are using this, so we can go for uh, getter, setter, no constructor, all our constructor to string. Okay. Or you can wrap up by using data whatever annotation. So we will use this thing here. Is a private. Just a second, guys. Okay, so we need to create two fields here, just one for token, one for message. So you can just string, you can say token or JWT token, whatever. And next we can say message, like what's the message. Okay, so we have this field message, and then you can create getter setter and constructor based stuff that we already have, because we have already used these annotations, all argument constructors. So this will be used here. Okay, so now I can pick this class from here. Now we are going back to authenticate service MPL. Okay, I'll name it register. But we are not, this is not their register, okay? Or you can say register request if it is not making sense. I'll say register user request. Might confuse you, so I'll say register user request. So whenever any request comes up, this method will pick that and register it itself. Okay, so method is done, and what we need to pass here, we need to pass that user. Okay, user. So I'll pick from our class that model request, then done. Okay, this is done. Now we need to check. Okay, let me comment as well so you guys will understand. Check if user already exists, then authenticate the user. Oops, already. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. Next line. So I'll check if we already have repository stuffs with us. So we can say this user repository or user DAO dot. Now we need to check it by using one method. We already have it. We have customized this method. Find by username, and here I'll say that request dot get username, right? If or you can say is present. So if present will go inside it, and if it happens, so go inside it and return new authentication response. Yep, this one which takes two arguments, and here because user is already logged in, so we don't need to return the token. You can simply say null, and that can go without quotes and comma, and we can say user already exists, right? Think about, we are trying to register one user and that user is already present in database, so what's the point of creating a new user? So we are restricting it. Okay, this is done. Next, if it won't happen, so that means we need to initialize everything for that user. So I'll create instance of the user, then user, and say user dot set, and here we'll start setting all the stuffs for the user. Simple thing from here, request dot get first name, user dot set last name, request dot get last name, user dot set username, request dot get username, user dot set password. And then again, when it comes to password, we don't go for plain text, right? We cannot just show our password content. So what we will do, we already have auto-add password encoder. So it's a password encoder dot encode. Then from the request, we will obtain the password, and that will be encoded by the password encoder. Specifically, Bcrypt hashing will happen on it. And last thing, the role, user dot set the role of that user, and that can be also obtained from here. Okay, so user basic stuff is done, and finally we already have user DAO. So user DAO dot save, then user object, and once it's done, to definitely it gives me user from database, right? That we already know. Capital U user. I'll say user DB. Okay, that's from the database. That's why I'm calling it user DB. Okay, it's done. Now we will use this database object and try to use it further. So what I'll do, I'll use JWT service. In this thing, we remember we have one method, generate token. We haven't used this method yet. Now the time. So once the user is saved in database, get that user from database, done, and get the string. So it's a string JWT, sorry, JWT token equals. So now we are getting our token. Yep, you will see that in how it works. Then once it's done, we need to do two things. Okay, save the user token. Okay, that we need to do because this is coming from this JWT service. So we need to save that, and plus we need to return something. So I'll say return new authentication response. So it says token. So I have that token. I'll say JWT token, comma, user registration is successful. Okay, this is done, but we need to save this user token. So to do that, we need to create one private method here. Okay, that remains local. So let's create one method, or I'll show you how you can also try. Just write save user token. You need to pass two things, token and the user object, user db. Okay, done. Then hover, create this out. Okay, that's how you can also obtain the method. And now you can fill this data. So simply what you need to do, you need to create a class. Remember we have this token class. So we are simply doing that. So token. If you forgot, not worry. We'll see here. There's an entity package, model package. This token we're talking about. So we are initializing this token class. So is token dot set token. So we already have this JW token service token. Set it. Then say token dot set logged out. So definitely it's a new token. So we can say nope, it's false, not logged out yet. Then token need user as well. So set user. Remember that's one-to-many relationship. That's here. And we already have database, so we can say user DB. And finally, once everything is done, we have we haven't auto-add token repository. Oh, there it is, token token DAO dot save, pass the token, and done. Yep, that's it. So save the user token in DB. Okay, that we did here. Give a space and one space just for readability. Nothing special. Okay, so we what we just did, we have registered the user request and then call it save method. So we are saving user detail in database here and then saving token as well in database. That's already right. Okay, and one more method we need to create for authenticate whether that request is still uh, there or not. So let's create one method that is going to be public. So public, again, token authentication response. We'll say authenticate user request. Okay, then we already have authentication manager that we are going to use. Let's have some space. So we'll say authentication manager dot authenticate. Yes, it does have some method, and we need to give the details it needs. So simply it needs new. Remember one class we have used user um, password authentication token. This one we saw this class earlier. Same class we are going to use here. So we'll say request dot get the username. Okay, then put a comma. Then next argument request dot get the password. That's it. So authenticate method needs user password authentication token that's from string security, and we are passing two arguments, username and password. Okay, this is done. Once it's done, now we can get details from repository. So I'll say user dov find by username, right? And here I'll pass because we are authenticating whether that user is present or not. Okay, and then or else throw exception. Done. So either get the user or throw the exception. User, and again I'll say it's from the user. It's from database. So I'll call it user db. Okay, this is done. Now what? We can call JWT service and call generate token. So generate token on the base of user data user object which comes from database, and again say string JWT token. Okay, so we will obtain the token from the user information, and then we need to create one method. First is revoke, I'll say all the token, whatever token has been generated so far, just revoke them because we are authenticating it. Token um, for the user, and next step would be save. That remains same. Save the user token in database because we are removing all previously created token and creating a new token and then doing this operation. You can just like a reproduction process. Once it's done and we want to again re-authenticate the user, so we can follow this approach. And final line would be return new authentication response, and here again we will give the token and say user login was successful, right? This is the best case I can say when users trying to log in. Again, maybe server is taking time or something is not happening. So in that case, users trying to again log in. So maybe first login was successful and token was generated, and user clicked on login button two times, maybe quite faster. In that case, one new token gets generated and previously generated token will be removed. So we have this code with us. We can simply call save user token, right? This will work. But we haven't created uh, use token. Just a second. Sorry, my bad. It's user. Let's fix this. Paste, paste. Okay, paste as well. So saving is done, but we haven't created this revoke. How to revoke all the methods? Okay, so let's create that method. So I'll call it revoke all token for user. Okay, and it will take one simple argument, that user db. Let's generate it. Hover the mouse, click on this method, and we will get that method at the structure. Now we need to, okay, I don't think we have that method in token class yet. Token DAO class, I mean. We have one find by name, but we don't have that method which says find, because we are talking about all tokens by that user. Okay, we just have one method which says find by this, but we don't have that method which says find all token by that user. So that will be quite complex, maybe for beginners, but okay, be focused. So I'm going to create one method, and thing is I need to generate some kind of, we call this nested query here. So let's do that. Why nested query? Because we have this user table. Let me explain again as per our design. Okay. So we have token and user, multiple tokens and one user, or you can say one user can have multiple tokens. So idea is I want to find all the tokens from token class which are mapped with this user. So whatever tokens this user has, I just want to fetch from token class. So how we can do that? We can write a simple Java class for that. Oh, sorry, a simple SQL query on join query. So how it works, I'll say list the return type. It will be a token type, our class, and then I'll say find uh, all token by user. Okay, and then I think I should call other method as well by user. That will be more authenticate on service MPL. Let's call this by user, will be better. By user. Copy. Okay. Just a method name convention, nothing else. Because I'm calling this method find all token by username. Okay, and this takes user object. So user. Then okay, we need to import this user from where? From our package. Okay, now I said we are going to write one nested query. But how to write your SQL query on Spring class, on Java class, right? So there's one annotation at query. Time for new thing. We can write our SQL queries on it by writing this annotation at query. So the query would be select, okay, um, star from token. That's my token table. Let's just cross check. But that's how I name the table names. Yep, token table. Because right now we are writing SQL queries, so we need to be very specific about the table name we have. And because we are going to use two tables, so let's use alias name. And if it is alias name, so I'll say select T. Okay, token T for token, and I'll say right here inner join. Now we have user table. So user table U. Now we need to write a condition, like on what basis we are going to join these two tables. So on T dot user ID equals U dot let me just cross check user ID or just ID. User underscore ID, and for U it's just ID. Let also cross check that it's just ID. Okay, so in token it's user underscore ID, there it is, and in user it is just ID. We haven't renamed it. Okay, so we can use user dot ID. Okay, done. Now we need to write a condition where T dot user underscore ID equals to. Now we need to put some placeholders. So I'll say user ID and that T dot, because we have one column logged out, logged out equals false. That user should not logged out. Okay, that user should be logged in. So simple query is select all the tokens from this table T, join with user table. The condition is user ID, where user ID equals to user this, and then we should call this as well ID. Why should I pass user? I'll say long this user ID. Okay, so this will be at runtime this user ID, which is in camel case, replaced by this user ID in camel case. So yeah, we are following some conventions here. So that's how we write a simple SQL query to write a SQL query in Spring Boot application. Okay, this is done. Let's go back to our class authentication service IMPL. Here we were trying to revoke all the tokens. Now we can easily do that. Simply say token DAO dot find by all token, find all token by user, and here we'll say user db dot get the ID. Done. And this will give me a list of tokens, right? So list of token. I'll say tokens. Done. Once I obtain the token, I need to empty that, right? So I can say if tokens is empty. In case if it's not there, so simply just return it, right? We don't need to do anything. It's already empty. Otherwise, I'll say tokens dot run a for each method. Okay, create a simple lambda expressions t for token, then this, then say t dot set logged out true. That's it. And once it's done, again say token tau dot save all. Okay, we have one method save all, and you can say tokens again. We are going back in database again and saving it again by saying save all the tokens we just created earlier. Okay, it's my bad. Keyboard issue. Okay, so yep, that's it. So that's how we revoke the token. So we are getting tokens from database. If it is there, excuse me. If it is empty, so don't do nothing. If it is there, so do one thing, get all the tokens one by one, set logged out true, and then save a token, because everything is based on this logout. Even in our query, we wrote it. Only fetch those result which has logged out false, and we are explicitly making it true once we are trying to revoke. So token will be there, we're just setting it logged out. So no query, no token will be fetched whose logged out is true, because user already logged out, so they need a fresh token. Okay, so our service layer is ready. Now we can go back for our controller, and that will be simple, not that tough. So service always takes, you can say complex code. When it comes to controllers, they are easy, right? So let's write this method. So first method would be for registration. So public, we have to create response entity, and here we will, because this is for authentication, so I'll say authentication response. Not a typical API call. Okay, it's actually a obviously it's going to be API call, but not that API call. So authentication response, then I'll pass here authentication service we just created earlier, authentication service MPL. You guys can go for and try to create its method as well, like, or let's create that as well, not a issue. So we can do what, but we need to auto add that thing as well. So this is our class. Let's do uh, I'm not going to rename, I just copied the name. Going to root package service, create a class interface name. remove the MPL, this becomes interface, and from this class I need two methods, right, which are public. One is this, copy it, going back, create this method, semicolon, and one more method from which is public, the authenticate. Copy it, going back to interface. We're just implementing that same concept in interface stuffs. And once it's done, I'll go back to my IMPL and says, okay, you're not alone. You need to do some implementation, authentication service. And yep, boom, nothing, no error, good. Now I can go back to my controller and do that, uh, auto wiring stuff. So private authentication service, and again here I'll use constructor based approach. So guys, completely your call. Either you want to go for this or that. This one, okay, it's done. Time to uh, create that method. Here I'll say public response entity authentication manager, and I'll say register. This is the actual register call or saving the user. So it's a register, and oh, I am passing here. Sorry, my bad. It's not supposed to go here. And we need to pass because we are going to create a post request. So it's going to be post request, and it will be like slash register, and then I'll say request body, right? That we know, request body, and here I will pass that user object we created, user, okay, and then simply call return authentication, so not capital A, authentication service dot register. We have this method, right? Register user request, and pass the user. Done. And of course we cannot do that directly. We need to pass it through response entity dot okay, pass this as an argument, and done. Yep, register endpoint is done. Likewise, let's create one login endpoint as well in the meantime. So it goes like login. Here I'll say login, and instead of saying register, I'll just say authenticate. Done. Okay. Yep. As I said, this will be simple class. We're just auto wiring this thing and calling two endpoints. Both are straightforward. If you understood how this authentication service is working, simple plain database call, and that same we have implemented. So guys, we are done with all this code, like what we needed. One more class we needed, that is for the logout stuff. So let's create that class, and in next class we'll try to use all this functionality. So functionality wise we are done. Only one class is left, that is for logout. Like once you want to log out, so how you want to do that? So, so we can do that in other class. So or we can do that later. Okay, so okay, maybe later once we test this functionality, then we'll try to log out, but for now it's not required at all. And if something goes wrong, so then we will try to log out that implementation. So next class we will test this functionality and see how it works. Okay guys, that's in the next video. Bye bye.